All right, welcome YouTubers. I'm going to talk about this YesWelder HJC03 Welding Cart that I got in this morning and was able to assemble this evening in about maybe 45 minutes to an hour, and I'll explain why it took me a little longer than it might take you. But I'm going to talk to you about quality of the product, ease of assembly, and just overall thoughts, and maybe a couple of tips and tricks as well to maybe help you assemble this better. Now, it obviously comes with an operator's manual, but there's a couple of things in here it does not discuss. They're minor, but I'll talk about that too. It came with this, which was a little concerning and very not well written. But I did not have any issues with whatever it's trying to tell us here. It says something about it being not is out of flatness, side panel or something. So I didn't have any issues with this. It's not well written. Probably not something that you really need to worry about, at least in my experience. So with that said, unboxed it. That took a little while. Everything was wrapped and packaged well. And once I got everything kind of laid out, assembly went fairly smooth. I'll talk to you about a couple of issues, and we'll just go front to back as far as assembly timeline goes. So first part of assembly, this bottom piece is the first one you want to locate. You want to locate the axle rod that goes across at the back, the two tires, one on each side. There's a washer and then a cotter pin on each side. So first part of assembly, take the bottom piece, insert the axle rod, put a tire on each side, put a washer on each side, and a cotter pin on the outside. Easy enough. There are two swiveling casters that go on the front. They're held on by, each of them have 4 screws. All the screws, all the nuts, hex nuts, and washers and lock washers, they're all the same size throughout the assembly. So that's good. You don't have to worry about like where does this washer or screw go or whatever. So very cool that everything uses the same size hardware throughout. So I think that's a great simple way to have this thing set up. So good for them for keeping that simple. So once you get the two front swivel casters on, then you actually mount these two pieces here. So these are sides, but they also have the drawer slides built onto them. Easiest way to orient them, and again the book will show this, but just put the piece that is angled, built in on the front, towards the front, and the 2 holes that this side piece eventually mount to go on the bottom. So easy enough, mount those up. I would note at this point, and it does say this in the instructions, or it alludes to this in a way that you should be able to understand, but just for simplicity's sake, just put in the front and side screws and leave these 2 off for now. You'll get to those when you put this side piece on eventually. So I always just snug them up as best I can, pretty much like finger tight, just to help like give it rigidity, but leave you a little bit of play so that you can get this stuff lined up. Because with the way these things are manufactured, just like most inexpensive non precision pieces of metal and equipment, you may need that wiggle room later on to assemble. So leave them hand tight, and that will do yourself a favor later on when you go to assemble the next pieces, because if you tighten them all the way, you will be loosening them back up so that you can get the holes to line up. So 2 side pieces here, this one, and this one will come later. So once these 2 side pieces are on, then you want to put on this back piece here, and it's got the keyholes in it for your chains to go through, and it has 3 screws, 1 on each side here, and then 1 in the middle that goes through the bottom. Again, I would leave those just hand tight for now. So at this point, you've got the sides and then this back part. Then you put in this little tray right here, this second middle tray, I guess you'd say. that has the YesWelder logo on the front of it. You will have all the screws. So you'd put in the front screws, the side screws, and the back side screws. And then at this point, I believe it tells you, but I put on these side pieces. One quick tip on the side pieces that I would note that I did, because at this point these drawers are not in, you're able to reach in. I put these screws on first, hand tight, then I put those on, and it just helps hold it in place, and it just makes assembly a lot easier when it's just one person. And trust me, you want to keep it one person. You don't need two people to do this. It just complicates things, and it's really not a hard assembly. One thing I would note in here at this point is that they don't really mention that every screw has its own flat washer, lock washer, and hex nut that goes with it. It mentions the screws and it mentions the hex nuts, but it does not mention the flat washers and the lock washers. But you find out pretty quickly, and it's not hard, but just go ahead and understand that every one of them has enough hardware for every one of these screws and hex nuts to have a flat washer and a lock washer for each one. Does not mention that in the instructions that I saw. This is a fairly new product, so that may change later on, but at the current time, the verbiage that I read in what they're calling the operator's manual did not mention that. So once you've got this middle tray in and you've got these vertical side pieces on, then the next part is to put in this top tray right here, and at the same time, simultaneously, you'll need to put in this little bracket. Now, these two brackets on the back here look identical to me. I don't think they differentiate in any way. So this one you can put on later, but this one needs to be sandwiched in with these screws, hex nuts, and lock washers on the back here. So that needs to be sandwiched in and attached. There is an extra, which is very nice, and it sturdies it up. I don't know if they had to do this, but it's nice, and I'll talk about it in a little bit. They have these extra screws in the corner. Okay. Then it's really your choice, but I think they recommend putting these your little hooks on here that hold your ground wires, leads, stuff like that. And there's one on each side, 2 screws on each side. It really doesn't matter whether you do these or the handle next, because there's nothing else that attaches to it. Once you've got all of that done, at this point, you should be able to get everything lined up, squared up, and tighten everything down. Again, these aren't in place at the time, so you can still access everything that's down there pretty easily. So from there, again, it doesn't really matter when you put this other bottle holder bracket on, because it's just got 2 screws that go through and hold it on. And then I put the chains on. Finally, I put in these drawers, and they just slide in. Just line them up and push them in, and they'll slide in. There's no liner on any of the shelves in the drawers on this shelf here or on the top. There's no rubber mats or anything. It's just painted metal. There's no rubber handle on this front handle here. Overall, I feel like once it's assembled and everything's tightened down, because of the attention to detail that they had to add these extra screws in a couple of spots, like on the front here, it's really a sturdy cart. I'm pretty happy with the quality in that regard. But there's a couple of things that you do need to notice, and just understand that you're kind of getting Chinese quality stuff. I would put this on par probably with Harbor Freight. Some of the Harbor Freight stuff can be nicer than this. I haven't really looked at the welding cart that they have, because I think theirs is open. They may have one that's like this that has the drawers. That's a single welder cart, but I wanted these drawers, and I'm happy that I got this one. But there are telltale signs that it's still a cheap Chinese product. So a couple of things I would note is, for one, in that regard, that there is Mine came in damaged a little bit. And I think this has to do, like, there's some dent, like some metal warpage or dents or something. But I think it's actually because of this tack weld on the back that holds the front to the side of the drawer. So overall, quality-wise, like I said, pretty good. I mean, this feels very nice. Ball bearing. I don't know if it's ball bearing, but these slides they feel nice. I think they're ball bearing, but they feel like ball bearing if not. They're very nice. They're not, you know, they're greased. They slide well. They're not there's no friction. And then they close well, you know. This handle did come in broke, but it doesn't affect anything. And it's just a crack. It's not really broken. It's just got a little crack in it, but you can't tell. And some people might not would even notice. But I did. Overall, I'm very happy with the product. I don't remember how much exactly I paid for it because I got it on promotion with a DP200 welder on the Kickstarter. But I think it was like maybe 100, 130 bucks, something like that. So overall, I would say definitely would consider this outright if I were looking for a cart, just because I do like the 4 drawers. They're pretty small, but they're going to hold your consumables and stuff like that. So not bad. It did have, I didn't miss any spots other than it does have an extra hole back here, but there's not a hole drilled in that bottle holder. So I can't really say for sure why they put that there. But anyway, and the other bottle holder bracket is the same way. There's no hole, so those brackets are the same. And it did come with a little extra hardware. So I guess, you know, it's got 4 extra sets of screws and hex nuts and washers. So the pan heads, screws that they use are very wide head, have a large lip. So I don't really use the washers on that side. So the assembly instructions and the exploded view that is in here in the book may show it a different way than the way I assembled it. I did not use the washers on the screw side because the screw has a wide head. And I wanted it to be as flush as possible. Like, to me, that's a cleaner install and it's functional. And so I put my stuff on the inside, and I did put the lock washers up against the flat surface of the metal. And then I put the washer on the outside of that, and then the hex nut. And the reason I did that is so that I would get the friction of the lock washer up against this metal, and then I could use that flat washer as kind of a more a higher surface area against that hex nut. I don't know if that, you know, makes sense to other people, but that's how I, in my mind, made logical sense of it. And again, it may differ from what they show here. I know there's a couple of parts that they show it done differently, but I think it's a lot cleaner this way, and I did not see the benefit or the reasoning behind putting it on the outside. I think it's a lot more flush and clean looking that way, and functionality wise, it did make sense. Last thing I would say is it did come with a couple of tools in the box, and for the most part, this is all you'll need for assembly. It comes with a cheap wrench, and I have tons of wrenches and sockets and ratchets and stuff I could have put this together with, but I wanted to see how well and easy this went together with this stuff. Overall, pretty easy. I could have probably cut about 10 to 15 minutes off of assembly had I used either power tools and or just better hand tools. But like I said, I wanted to see how long it took. So I think it took about 45 minutes to an hour, and I really took my time, and I had a couple of things that I just kind of learned over, you know, putting it together, like everything gets a washer. And I didn't know that at first. So I had a little bit of disassembly, but it was just on the caster part. So I figured that out early on. Just didn't mention it, you know, in the instructions. So you know, usually when you have these, it says, you know, screw, washers, and hex nut, but it just said screws and hex nuts And it didn't really show in that part of the book, I don't think, the assembly. So then later on, I'm like, man, we've got a lot of washers. I wonder if if I'm supposed to have used those. And I looked forward and I saw that exploded view, and I was like, oh yeah, they got enough for all of it. So come with that little cheap wrench, and it came with this like actually fairly decent screwdriver. Not the best, not the most comfortable. It's not Snap-on or anything like that, but it actually is, as you can tell, it's magnetic tip, which is nice because when you're assembling this stuff and you're doing it alone, which really you want to do it alone, you don't want anyone helping you with this, I promise you. They'll just complicate things and they'll frustrate you. So just do it yourself and use this, and it helps hold your screw in place, and because it is magnetic tip. And it's good enough to get through this. It's not gonna, it's not gonna do many other jobs beyond this. I tried to hold the screw in place and leverage more with this when I'm using these cheaper tools, just so they'll not strip, because they're gonna wanna strip if you really wanna torque on this cheap screwdriver too much. But overall, I was actually pretty impressed that they included this. It would have been nicer, a couple of little things to note. It would have been nicer if they would have included a flange hex nut that are like a flange locking hex nut with a nylon insert. Would have done better, but they did that for, I'm sure, for budgetary economical purposes to keep this thing fairly cheap. But it would have done the same thing. It would have been cleaner and it would have been better if they did that, in my opinion. They would have accomplished the same thing. So, it wouldn't want to back out. It would have the flange, which would give you better surface area. I think it would have been better because you wouldn't have this, it's kind of uglier this way, and it's kind of a big sandwich, in my opinion. But, you don't have to critique it too much. I mean, this thing's pretty inexpensive, so, but that would have been helpful. And then the only other thing I would add, the only other tool I really needed or had to have, I used needle nose pliers, but you can use whatever you want. But that was just to bend out the cotter pins. So overall, not bad. I do have a Vulcan welding cart from, it's the large cabinet from Harbor Freight. It's quite a bit better quality. I will say on the Vulcan that the tires have developed flat spots. These tires here seem like they won't. Initial impression is that these may be better tires overall long term. The Vulcan holds a oxygen acetylene torch for me, a torch setup, and so there's a lot of weight on them, but they're grooved tires. And they've just developed a flat spot. So when I try to roll it, it just makes a lot of noise. So that's one thing I would say. I can definitely say this cart seems to have better tires. Feel and quality-wise, I think the Vulcan is better in most every other way. But this thing is solid, and it says it'll hold, I think, 250 pounds weight limit. You're not going to probably put that kind of weight on it, but, I don't know how you'd test that, but, no, it says 235 weight capacity. So, overall, very happy with it. I think that YesWelder is an up and coming brand. I've got a couple of their welders. Overall, I would say I'm pretty happy with them. I did get one that was dead on arrival. And they replaced it under warranty and did not ask me to send it back. This is a very, considering, I think it's their most expensive welder. It's a Firstis CT 2050. I got it on the Kickstarter, kept it boxed up, got busy, did not have it for a very long time, hooked up at all. Like it was brand new in box, hooked it up, would not stick weld at all. And I got a hold of their warranty department. I think it's care@yeswelder.com. After a little bit of back and forth, I provided the serial number and some other information for them. I actually had to send in a video of what it was doing. There was quite a few emails back and forth. They were wavering a little bit on their warranty. It's a 3-year warranty on that product. I had it for a little over 2 years when I hooked it up for the first time, And because the Kickstarter had a 2-year warranty instead of the 3-year that they've gone to now on it, they were giving me a little bit of a hard time, but I will give it to them. They stepped up. They sent me a replacement at no charge. Did not ask for the other welder back. Handled their stuff pretty well. And the replacement machine works well. And I've since then added the DP200, which is the promotion that I got this cart as a part of on Kickstarter. And that machine has so far been very impressive. I've only done flux core welding with it, but it is makes me a better welder. I will say that. So YesWelder is a pretty good brand of off-branded stuff, I would say. In my experience so far, they have stood behind their product, even though if it took them a little while to kind of, step up. They did the right thing, in my opinion, and took care of me. And I would say they're worthy of, doing business with. And maybe you can use them if you're a hobbyist. I wouldn't say they're going to be a Miller or a Lincoln or maybe even a Hobart competitor, but I would say the Titanium and Vulcan line from Harbor Freight and maybe there's a new one or another one called Art Captain. I don't know, I haven't personally used any of those brands, but I would think they would all be very comparable. So YesWelder is a good alternative in my opinion so far. Give them a shot. This welding cart, I believe the Harbor Freight one doesn't, at least that I know of, doesn't have the drawers, and that's kind of why I chose this one. But hopefully that assembly and review will help you make a decision if you're considering one of these carts. And post your comments below if you think I did something wrong or could have done something better, or if you have experience that can help someone. Definitely share your experience and let us know how you feel if you've got one of these carts or one of their products. Have a great day.